Hi, Mr. C here. Right, I bought this book, Stories from the Sea, because it's got some really interesting stories in it, and I thought you might enjoy them, or at least one or two of them. Now, have you ever wondered why the sea is salty? Because if you think about it, you turn your tap on, and the water that comes out, that's not salty, is it? So why is the sea salty? And there happens to be a story in this book, which is Why the Sea is Salty, and it comes from Finland. At the edge of the forest, where fir and larch sweep down to the Baltic Sea, there stands a village of wooden huts. One Christmas, the sound of children crying could be heard from inside one of the huts. It was the home of a poor fisherman who had no food to give his 7 children. In despair, his wife sent him to his rich brother's house at the other end of the village. When he reached the house, the poor man asked, Can you give me some food for Christmas, brother? My children are starving. The rich man thrust a cow's hoof into the poor man's hand with the words, Now, go to the devil. Away went the poor man with the cow's hoof in his hand and a frown upon his brow. If my brother says so, he mumbled to himself, I must go to the devil, but where will I find him? He went into the forest, following a beaten track until he caught the sound of woodmen at their work. Hey, woodman, he called, do you know where the devil lives? Sure we do, they said. The devil is Heesi, master of this forest, were his woodcutters. How do I reach his house? Follow the trail of felled trees and you'll get there soon enough. But take our advice, carry with you a birchwood log, for as you enter his house he'll shake your hand. Give him the log instead, or he'll make mincemeat of your hand. One thing more, should he offer you a gift, ask for nothing save his millstone. He keeps it hanging on the wall. Do that and you'll never want for food again. Thanking the woodman for their advice, the poor man went on his way until he came to Heesi's house. With a polite knock, he walked in and stood before a tall stone stove. There on top sat Heesi, his white hair and beard flowing to the floor, a single yellow tooth hanging over his bottom lip. His gnarled brown hands broader than the widest tree. The fisherman stared about him nervously as Heesi stretched out his enormous hand and roared, Welcome, guest! At once the poor man thrust his birchwood log into Heesi's hand and stared as sawdust ran through the devil's fingers to the floor. I brought you a gift, he stuttered, a cow's hoof. Old Heesi smiled. Taking the hoof, he crunched it contentedly with his gums and swallowed it down, not leaving a scrap of bone. Many promised me food, he said, but none dare come near my home. Now, what will you have as your reward? Gold, silver? I've no use for either, the poor man said, but since you offer me a reward, I'll take the millstone hanging on your wall. Old Heesi's smile soon faded. He did not want to part with his millstone, so he offered a pot of gold, a tub of silver, a chest of salt. But the poor man was as stubborn as he was simple, and he refused them all. Ah, well, Heesi sighed at last, I suppose I must grant you what you ask. Take the millstone. You have only to say, Grind, my millstone, grind away, and it will bring you all you wish. And when you've had enough, tell it, Stop, my millstone, grind no more, and it will cease. Now be off with you, before I change my mind. The fisherman took the millstone and set off for home, with it on his back. As he reached the door of the hut, he saw his angry wife waiting for him, hands on hips. Where have you been, you good-for-nothing scoundrel? She shouted. And what's this you're carrying on your back? You You can't put a millstone in a pot to boil. With a smile, he put the millstone on the table and shouted loud enough to raise the roof. "Grind, my millstone, grind away! Bring plenty of food for the holiday!" Heesi's millstone at once began to turn round and round, pouring out loaves of bread and rings of rolls, jugs of milk and cabbage, pies, salted sprats and rounds of cheese. Never in their lives had the family set their eyes upon such tasty food. Quickly the wife brought sacks and bowls and filled them full of food, and still the millstone ground away. Finally the poor man said, "Stop, my millstone, grind no more." While the hungry family were eating their fill, the rich brother chanced to look in at the door. His eyes grew wide in surprise. "Ah, I see my cow's hoof served you well," he said. "Yes, indeed, brother," the poor man replied. "I did exactly as you said, and I went to the devil, and I brought back his millstone. All we have to say is, 'Grind, my millstone, grind away,' and it brings all we need." Being jealous of his brother's good fortune, the rich man was keen to get his hands on the magic millstone. So he said, "Lend me the millstone for a while. After all, it was my cow's hoof that brought you good luck." The simple-hearted man readily agreed. However, such was the greedy brother's haste that he forgot to ask about the words that stopped the stone. Hurrying down to the shore, he set the millstone in the bows of his fishing boat and headed out to sea. When he was ready, far out, he cast his nets into the sea and soon pulled in a heavy catch. Not satisfied with this, he decided to salt the fish without delay. Standing up in his boat, he yelled above the gusting wind, "Grind, my millstone, grind away! Pour out salt this livelong day!" At once the millstone began to spin and turn, grinding out the purest, whitest salt. There was soon enough to salt the whole boatload of teeming fish. The rich man looked on in glee, rubbing his hands, but the salt continued to stream out. Soon his smile turned to an anxious frown. It was time to call a halt, but what were the words he should use? "Cease, my millstone, stop, stop, stop! Grind no more, no more, no more! Enough, 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 I say!" It was no use. So heavy was the boat by now that it was sinking lower and lower into the water. Soon the sea was coming over the sides and the boat was near to sinking altogether. The rich man tried desperately to throw the millstone overboard, but it was stuck fast and would not move. As the sea closed over him, he sank with his boat and its load of fish right down to the ocean bed. And what of the millstone? The folk who dwell upon those shores say that even on the ocean floor it continued to turn and turn and turn. It remains there still, grinding out an endless stream of salt. That is why, if you have not already guessed, the sea is full of salt. Nice idea. I like that story. I don't know why. That sounds good to me. So I'm going to say goodbye. Stories from the sea and goodbye from Mr. C. You take care. Bye.